Hi everyone, welcome to Netgate Chemistry. So today in this video we are going to start with the previous year questions of electrochemistry which are being asked in the CSIR NET exams. So the first question which we are going to discuss says that in a potentiometric titration the end point is obtained by observing change in color, jump in potential, increase in current or increase in turbidity. So basically we have to tell that whenever we do potentiometric titration, then what are we going to observe at the end point. So in case of potentiometric titrations, what are the bases? The basis for potentiometric titrations is the Nernst equation, right? And whenever we perform a potentiometric titration, then we plot a graph between del E versus volume of titrant. Where we take del E on the y-axis and volume of titrant onto this x-axis. Here E is the EMF of the cell, of the reaction. Now whenever we plot a graph in case of potentiometric titration, we get a graph like this. Okay, the graph is like this, and this section gives some slope, and this slope value depends on the value of equilibrium constant, right? So this slope is going to give us the equivalence point. Using this slope we are going to find out the equivalence point. Steeper is the slope, easier it will be to find equivalence point, right? So basically here in this graph, this section is going to give us the equivalence point, and steeper the slope, better will be the result for us to find the equivalence point, right? So what have we studied till now? That the basis of these potentiometric titrations is the Nernst equation, and we plot a graph between del E and volume of titrant. We get a plot like this, where this section is going to give us some slope, and this value of slope depends upon the equilibrium constant, and steeper is the slope, easier for us to find out the equivalence point. So suppose if this slope is not steep enough so that we could find the equivalence point with accuracy, then what we are going to do is we'll simply plot another graph where we'll take del E by del V versus volume of titrant, and then we are going to get a graph like this. Now in this graph, this point is going to give us the equivalence point, now suppose using this graph also, if we are not able to find out the equivalence point of that titration with accuracy, then what we are going to do is we'll do another derivative of this EMF versus volume of titrant, and then we are going to get a graph which will be like this, okay? And here we are going to get these points, these 2 points, and what we have to see is the difference between these 2 points. Lesser is the difference between these 2 points, reaction will go to the completion, right? Less is the distance between these 2 points, we will be knowing that the reaction is going towards the completion. So what we are observing in all these cases is the jump in potential. See, here the potential value was initially increasing and suddenly there was jump in the potential. Here also there was sudden jump in the potential. After this point there was a sudden change, and here also there was a jump in the potential at these 2 points, right? Between these 2 points there was a jump. There was not a similar increase in the value of del E. There was a jump, right? So in all these cases, what we are going to observe in case of potentiometric titration is the jump in the value of potential. So the correct option is option B. So with this, we'll move on to the next question. Hoping that this question is clear to you guys, that potentiometric titrations are those titrations in which we are going to find out the end point of the titration using the potential values. So what we do is we plot a graph between potential value and the volume of titrant. But if we are not able to get the equivalence point with accuracy, what we are going to do, we are going to take the derivative of this potential value. Then what we get, a graph like this. Suppose using this graph also we are not going to get the equivalence point with accuracy, then again we'll do the derivative and we'll get a graph like this. So using these 3 ways we can find out the end point, but what is common in all these 3 graphs is the jump in potential which we get at the equivalence point, right? So now we'll move on to the next question. So the next question says that Coleridge law is applicable to a dilute solution of KCl in hexane, acetic acid in water, HCl in water, or benzoic acid in water. So basically if we look at the Coleridge law, then what it says, due to Coleridge law, at infinite dilution means the solution is diluted, that is we have added so much of water into the solution, that when dissociation is complete, each ion is going to contribute in a definite contribution to the molar conductance. Suppose we have an electrolytic solution, we have some electrolyte in it, right? And that electrolyte has completely dissociated into X positive and Y negative ions in water, right? Then these X positive ions are going to have certain definite contribution, and these Y negative ions are going to have certain definite contribution towards the molar conductance, right? This is what Coleridge law says, that each ion is going to have definite contribution towards the molar conductance. So now what we have to see is that Coleridge law is only applied to the solutions in which we have the electrolytes which are strong electrolytes. It is not applicable in case of weak electrolytes. If you remember, then we have discussed this graph of lambda m, molar conductance versus root of concentration. In case of weak electrolyte, this graph is like this, right? And if we see from here to here, if we move from here to here, that is we are diluting the solution, right? In this side concentration is increasing. If we move towards this side from right to left, then what we are doing is we are diluting the solution, right? Concentration is decreasing, or we can say we are diluting this solution. Then at this point, what is this? This is the infinite dilution where concentration is approximately 0. We cannot find the value of lambda m because in this graph it is reaching infinity. We cannot find the value of molar conductance in case of weak electrolytes, but this is not the case in case of strong electrolytes. For strong electrolytes we get graph like this, and by extrapolating this graph at infinite dilution or at concentration approximately equals to 0, by extrapolating this graph we can get the value of molar conductance at infinite dilution. This will be molar conductance at infinite dilution. This point will give the value of lambda naught m. But this is only for the case of strong electrolytes. in case of weak electrolytes, we are not able to find the value of molar conductance at infinite dilution. So this is basically the Coleridge law. Now if we look at the options, then first option is KCl in hexane. See, whenever we're using the solvent, that is a polar solvent. In this case, I said we are using water, right? So we need polar solvent and strong electrolytes which breaks into ions. That means polar electrolyte also, right? So now if we look at KCl in hexane, hexane is non-polar. It is a non-polar solvent. KCl is polar, okay, it will break into K positive and Cl negative, but in hexane it is not going to break into K positive and Cl negative. So this is definitely not the answer. Now acetic acid will break down in water, right? CH3COOH is going to break down in water as CH3COO negative plus H positive, but CH3COOH itself is a weak electrolyte. So what happens in this case? We are adding a weak electrolyte in water, right? Now this is not going to get completely dissociate. That is why I have used this arrow, right? This equilibrium arrow, because it is not going to dissociate completely. Why? Because it is a weak electrolyte. So suppose I'm going to take the concentration at concentration nearly equal to 0. That means at infinite dilution, which means that we have a little amount of acetic acid and we have added a lot of water into it. Then in a unit volume will not be having at least that amount of the ions which are going to contribute towards the molar conductance, right? The ions which should contribute to the molar conductance, they are going to become insignificant because these weak electrolytes are already going to dissociate very feebly into the water. And if we are taking a very small portion after infinite dilution, that is after adding a lot of water into a little amount of acetic acid, then what would happen is that in a unit amount of this complete solution will not be having enough of the ions which are going to contribute towards the molar conductance. So in this case also we are not going to apply Coleridge law. That is, Coleridge law is not applicable here. Okay, now in case of HCl in water, HCl completely dissociates into H positive and Cl negative because HCl itself is a strong electrolyte. Also we are adding water, so water is a polar solvent, right? So we are adding H positive Cl negative, it will break into H positive and Cl negative completely, and we are adding H2O which is a polar solvent, right? So definitely Coleridge law is going to apply here because this is a strong electrolyte and this is a polar solvent. So dissociation will be complete and Coleridge law will be applicable here. Benzoic acid in water. See, benzoic acid in water, it is not going to dissociate. In fact, benzoic acid is going to associate, sorry, it's not water, it is benzene, right? It is going to associate in benzene. Okay, so dissociation is not going to happen. What happens here is, see, in D option they have given benzoic acid in benzene, not water. So benzoic acid, when we are going to add benzoic acid to benzene, what is going to happen is that it is going to associate via hydrogen bonding. So it is not going to dissociate and we are not going to get any values of molar conductance. So this is also definitely not going to be the answer. So the correct option is option C. So I think so far that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.